Well, hello there. I'm sure that you've heard the news. Chat GPT has taken over the universe and everybody's talking about OpenAI. It's the hottest topic in all of IT. But the trouble is, most of the tutorials are using things like Next and Node and all sorts of command line shenanigans. Well, in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to build a complete website that integrates with the OpenAI API. We're going to have Chat GPT integrated with your website, and we're going to do this with PHP and vanilla JavaScript. This is the app that we're going to build. It's called Clown News. Now, the idea here is that we enter a headline, like a negative news headline, like the bank has been robbed. And what this is going to do is it's going to generate a headline that blames the bad news on a gang of evil, creepy clowns. Then it's going to generate a picture that has something to do with our news story. So here you can see a creepy clown outside the bank laughing. That's what's coming up. It's all here, and let's get started. Alright folks, to get started with this one, I'm going to recommend that you get PHP and MySQL or MariaDB onto your computer. Now, there's a variety of different ways of doing this, but I'm going to recommend going with XAMPP, okay? So, head to your favorite search engine and search for XAMPP. You should be taken to the Apache Friends website, and you can get XAMPP for Mac, Windows, or Linux. This thing has a wizard that's super easy, but if you have any challenges, just let me know in the comments, okay? Now, the next thing is we're going to be using a PHP framework here. Now, there's not going to be any command line shenanigans or third-party dependencies or anything like that. However, we are going to be using one framework, and that will be the Trongate framework. And I'm using this because it's the closest thing that I can find to pure PHP, and it's really, really easy. And also, it's going to enable us to do a ton of work really, really quickly. Is this page down? No, it was not. I was about to start crying like a baby. Anyway, the best way to get Trongate is to go to trongate.io/download. And from here, you can download a little app called the Trongate desktop app. It's actually just a headless browser, believe it or not. So it's just exactly like having a browser, except without the address bar. And it's going to enable us to do things much, much more quickly. This is free. It will always be free. And by the way, interesting little factoid, parts of this framework were actually written by the Chat GPT application. That's right. So this framework is partly made by AI, which seems kind of appropriate. Now, I know that there's some of you who are completely paranoid about downloading things. Well, there is a link to a GitHub page, and you can get Trongate straight from GitHub if you want. However, you might find that things are a little bit slower. I would recommend, look, if in doubt, just watch the tutorial, okay? Listen to the friendly voice. Now, I happen to have Trongate on this computer, so I'm going to click this little icon down here, and it's going to say, please make sure you have PHP and your database up and running. So let me do just that. I'm going to navigate to localhost, and it looks like we have. Here's PHP my admin. I'm just checking here, and yeah, everything is looking fine. Okay, so we've got that. Now, I'm gonna, let's see, where are we gonna go here? Let's go back to the Trongate desktop app. I'll say OK, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create new app. So I'm gonna enter an app name. Now I'm gonna call this app Clown News. Before I press submit, by the way, can I just show you very, very quickly? Remember I said that the desktop app is a headless browser? Well, just to show you what I mean, if I go to trongate.io, now I think this is the address, you can see this is actually just a normal page here. So again, please do not be too impressed by this stuff here. There's nothing weird going on. This is literally just a browser that's reading pages from the Trongate site, okay? So I'm going to call this app Clown News. I'm going to hit submit. It's going to suggest, that's a strange background, let me just change that to something a bit less distracting. Okay, so it's going to suggest a base URL. Now I'm perfectly happy with the one that it has, or the one that it has suggested, so I'm going to click submit. And now we have to enter our database connection details. Now if you click here, you'll see that it auto completes. You may need to change a password or whatever, but for me, this is just fine. So I'm going to submit again. Now it's going to ask us to choose a location for the new app. So I'm going to click, and I'm going to choose, for me on this computer, it's inside XAMPP htdocs, but your path may be different. Nevertheless, htdocs is where all of my own websites live. So over on the right here, I'm going to click create new app here. Okay, now I'm going to click generate new app. Now remember folks, everything that has been happening here is literally, this is just a browser. That's all it is, okay? But when we click generate new app, I'll tell you what's going to happen, right? It's going to go out to GitHub. And you know how on GitHub you can download zip files here? Well, it's going to actually download the zip file automatically. Then it's going to move it into the folder that you selected. It's going to extract the zip file, do a little bit of configuration, and create a database. Which sounds like a lot, but watch how fast this is. So here we go, and there you are. So app successfully created. If we click on view your new app, it will open up the browser and you'll get a page that looks something like this. I'm really zoomed in and I'm on quite a small monitor, but you should get a page that looks something like that. Have a look at the URL. You'll see that it says localhost /clown news. And if you go to your database here, or your database management software, you should see that we have a database here called Clown News that has been created. So now we're going to do some CRUD. Create, read, update, and delete. For speed, we're going to use the Trongate desktop app. I'm going to click create new module, and I'm going to choose new Trongate module. Now the module name singular is going to be story. I'm going to click submit. It's going to ask if you want to add a navigation label. Now you can leave this blank if you want, or you can change it, anything you want, but I'm happy with this. I'm going to just click submit. And now it's asking if you want a navigation icon. This is referring to an admin panel that you're going to have in just a minute. So I'm going to say yes, just for fun. And it's going to open up another window here. You can see we've got a whole bunch of icons. Choose anything that makes you feel good. As for me, I'm going to type in newspaper, and I'll choose this little newspaper icon. All right. Now it says, let's add some properties. So I'm going to click OK. And we now have a properties builder. Again, folks, all of this is being read from the Trongate website. There's actually nothing on my computer here. Remember that, right? Don't be too impressed, okay? So I'm going to choose variable character from the top left, and this is going to be called original headline. And I'm going to click add new property. So the original headline is going to be required, max length of 255, minimum length of 2. You can change these numbers if you want, by the way. You can click onto these and literally change them, but I'm not going to bother. And this is going to represent our original headline, the one that we type in, and that's that, okay? Now, the next field is going to be a text area. And this text area is going to be called funny headline. This is the headline that's going to be generated by OpenAI. Let's add this one. And the reason why I'm making it a text area is because I have this thing made in such a way that it could potentially return something with more than 255 characters. Okay, so that's what's happening here. Now I'm going to take out this required thing because it's not required. And by the way, you can see that you can close these and expand them and all of that, okay? But this one is not required and it's a text area. All right, let's have one more field. It's going to be another text area. And this one is going to be called picture. And this is going to contain a URL that, if we go to the URL, it's where a picture is, right? The reason why I'm making this a text area is because this is going to be a generated picture from OpenAI. And sometimes the URLs that you get back are really, really, really big. So let's not take any chances. We'll just make it a text area. Let's add this. Okay, and again, I'll keep that one along with the funny headline. They will not be required, but the original headline is required, okay? So when you're happy, click on submit. All right, so we're back here. Now we've got a thing called choose URL column. This is a thing that, well, if you've ever used WordPress, have you ever heard them talking about a slug? It's where you have a thing in the URL that is, let's say, easy to read. So you could potentially take your original headline, and if your headline was unemployment on the rise, you could have in the URL unemployment hyphen on hyphen the hyphen rise. Now, we're not going to do that today. It's one of those things that might be useful in the future though, especially if you're interested in things like SEO. But I'm going to just keep this one empty. And now we're going to choose a default order by. So when we look at things on the admin panel, how would you like them to be ordered? I'm going to click. I'm going to choose ID ascending. And now we're going to generate new module. So let's do that. So it's doing its thing. And there we go. And it says view module. Now when we click view module, it opens your browser, takes you to a full admin panel with complete security and everything. And we can now click create new story record. I'm going to click here. And you can see I had a little practice run. I'm just going to say first try ahoy. I'll just say this is super. Let me zoom you in a little bit, will you? This is super funny and no pick today. It doesn't matter, we're just testing it, right? So if we click submit, there you go. So we've created a record. Have a look on the top left, you'll see our navigation complete with the icon. We have comments. I'll just show you that. Here is a comment. And we've got all sorts of token-based authorization and everything. So, not too bad, right? Now, I think that some people, when they see that, they kind of freak out a little bit. So, again, let me just take a moment to explain what happened, right? So, everything that we were doing on this Trongate desktop app is just reading pages from the website. So remember, this is just a browser, right? It's nothing weird, it's just a browser. Now, when you selected all of the stuff, the properties builder and all that, it was all just pages from the Trongate site. And then when you hit submit or generate module, what it did is it sent a request to this website here, and then the website generated a module. Now a module is just a folder that contains some code, right? So that thing got generated on the Trongate website, then it got turned into a zip file, then it got downloaded onto your application, and immediately it got deleted from the Trongate website. So the point is that the Trongate site, you know, has no means of looking at what you're building or anything like that, okay? So all of this stuff is really just for speed, and I hope you'll agree. that this has been kind of fast, right? So now let's have a closer look at the homepage here. So you can see we've got this blue homepage. It's not too impressive, and I think that we can actually do a whole lot better than this. So I'm going to ask you to open up your favorite text editor. Whatever works for you is fine. And I'm going to open up my clown news thing. Alright, so this is our website here. This is what we've just created, okay? Now, just to give you a super quick tour, on the very top left you can see a folder called config. This is where our configuration files for this website live. If you open up config.php, oh, by the way, please do give Trongate a star on GitHub if you like using this. But in any event, for clarity, I'll just get rid of that for now. I'll save and I'll zoom you in a little bit. So you can see here that we've got these constants. A constant is kind of like a special type of variable where the value does not change, you know? So one of the constants is base URL, and here it is, and we now have our base URL here. So that's our home page, you know? Now there's a few other configuration things in here. For example, here's database.php. Sure enough, here's all of our database settings. And by the way, take a little trip here, have a look, and you'll see that we've now got a bunch of database tables, and even our stories database table. It's all here, and it's all ready to go. Okay, now the next folder that I'll mention very briefly is the engine folder. This is where most of the inner workings of the Trongate framework exist. I'm going to recommend that you don't mess about with that folder actually. One of the cool things about Trongate is that whenever new features come out, all you have to do is swap the engine folder, and it's just a much nicer way of working than receiving an email that says your stuff has broken, you know, because of some insane rewrite schedule. By the way, I clicked into license there. Let me just show you something. I'm going to change this number and make it lower, right? Now just watch for a second. I'm going to close. Now we do have a little license in here somewhere. I'm going to change that to a lower version number. Okay, I'm going to save. I'm going to close. Okay, so just imagine, if you will, that this is an old version of Trongate and there's been some kind of update, okay? Now I'm going to reset this app. Watch how Trongate handles framework updates. Imagine we go in one day and we say, let's modify our app. I'm going to work on this app. Check this out. It says Trongate version blah 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 is available. Aha! How did it know? The answer is it read the license file. It read the number. It saw that there was a mismatch. So when we click here, we've now got three choices. Update to version, you know, the latest one, 1.3.3, blah, 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 blah. Continue using the one that you're on, or click here and find out what's new. So if I click here, watch this, have a look at this. Successfully updated framework engine to the new version, and we say OK. So that's how easy it is to have framework updates added to your website. And what happened there is it was swapping out the engine folder, okay, just to let you know. Now there's a few other folders here. I don't want to turn this into a full tour of the framework, but what I will say is that this modules folder is where most of the action happens. Almost everything in Trongate is a module. So we just created a stories module. Have a look. You can see it's got assets, controllers, views. By the way, if we go back to the site, suppose we go to maybe, how about this page? Let's see, how about this page here where we create a new story record, okay? take a wild guess. What view file, if I click in, do you think is being called for this page here? That's right, it's the create view file. And here it is, and it's just a very simple form with a little bit of PHP. So the key takeaway is this is a really, really easy framework to use. Now, if we go back to config for a moment here, config.php, you can see that we've got a default module called welcome, a default controller called welcome, and a default method called index. So with that in mind, let's look at modules. You'll see we've got a welcome module here. Now it says that's the default module, fine. Now we've got a default controller called welcome. And if we look inside this controllers folder, you'll find a welcome.php file with a welcome.php class. Inside here, we have a method called index. Don't forget, a method is just a function that's inside a class. And so what's happening here is we're saying that this is the default module and this is where we start from. So if we had said that the default method is hello, I'm going to save. And if we had a little thing here that said function hello, and I'm just going to, if I can type, go like this and save. Now if I go back to the home page and refresh, you know what's going to happen. It's going to say hello. So now you know how this works, okay? So let me just put this back to the way it was. And so we're now back to our normal home page here, but we're going to make this page look a whole lot better. You see, so far, this is just loading up a welcome view file, this thing in here. And as you can see, it's just some HTML, you know, congratulations, it totally works. So this is the code that gives us this blue page here. Now that's kind of okay, and sometimes it might be nice to do that. But wouldn't it be super cool if we had an HTML template? Something a little bit more sophisticated. So here's how we're going to do this. We'll take this line out. We're going to say data view module equals welcome. I'm telling the framework, hey framework, some stuff's going to happen, and it's inside the welcome module. Next I'm going to say data view file equals, now let's have a new view file. I'll call this one home page, and we'll create this in just a second, right? Finally, I'm going to say this, let's call upon template. Now Trongate does have a template class, and do you remember our admin panel here? This is actually the admin template that comes with the framework, but there's another template called public. It's just a little starter template. So we're going to have the public template, and we're going to pass in the data and save, okay? Now let's go to our views folder here. We'll make up a new file, and I'm going to call it homepage.php. Of course, you can call it anything you want, but around about here, I'll do an H1 and I'll say welcome, and then I'll do a paragraph and I'll say let's blame all of the bad news on a gang of creepy clowns. Okay, now if we save and then go back to the home page, now you can see we have a much better looking home page. And right here, this is where our view file lives. Now, one other thing. If you have a look at config again, have a look at site owner. You can see we've got a variety of other settings here. You can change these, of course. You can add your own settings. You can do anything you like. But you see how we've got one here that says website name? Well, if we go to our headline and say welcome to, and then I'm just going to echo, actually it's a constant, it's website name. You write it like this, right? If we do that, save and refresh, you can see that now it says welcome to Clown News. Kinda cool, right? Kinda cool. Okay, so let's now build the page. I'm going to have a form on this page, or at least some form tags. Now, it doesn't have to be an ordinary form. We're actually going to be using a whole bunch of JavaScript here, but don't worry, it's going to be easy. Ordinary form tags will be just fine. But to speed things up, I am going to go into PHP, and I'm going to use a few things that come with Trongate that will make this process really fast. So first of all, we're going to have a form label. I'm going to echo form label, and our label is going to say original headline. There you go. Okay, now if we save and refresh, there's what we've got. And if I show you the source code, you can see right down here, it's a very small font, but you can just about see that we've got a form label here. So that's what we're doing. We're adding in these different form elements here. The next one is going to be our text input field. I'm going to echo form input. Now, this is going to have a name of original headline. So that's original underscore headline. Then it's going to have a default value. So I'll just leave this empty. And that's us. Okay, so if we save and if we go back here, zoom out a little bit, refresh, there's our text input field here. Now underneath this, I'm going to echo form button, and this is just going to be an ordinary button, so I'll just say submit. That's going to be the name of this element, and this here will be the button text. So it's going to say the word submit with an uppercase S. So save, refresh, and there you go. Kind of easy, right? Kind of easy. So when we use these things, what's happening is Trongate is drawing all of the form elements that we have asked for, and there they are. However, I think that we can do a little bit better. Let's have a placeholder on our form input field here. To do this, I'm going to add a third argument, and the third argument is going to be an array. Now there's different ways of doing arrays with PHP. I'm going to do this method. I'm going to say attribute, and then I'm going to say in square brackets placeholder equals enter title here. Actually, it's enter original headline. I'll just say enter headline here. There we go. Okay, so I'm now going to pass my attributes array into form input as the third argument. Save and refresh, and now we have a nice little placeholder. Now how about if we make this form maybe a little bit more narrow? Would that be cool? Okay, so we'll do some styling. I'll do it directly on the page just for speed, and I'll say form. So if we have a form going on, it's going to have a maximum width of maybe 420 pixels, and then I'm going to say margin 0 auto. That's going to move it to the center. So save, refresh, there you go. If you want, you can also align the headline to the center. We can say class text hyphen center. Okay, and we can do the same with the paragraphs. Class is text center, and there you go. This text center class comes with the Trongate framework. Trongate actually has its own CSS library. You don't need to use it. You can use something else like Bootstrap or something if you want, but sometimes it's nice just to get things up and running quickly. Okay, so there we go. Now, from this point on, we're going to be doing quite a bit of JavaScript, but don't worry, I'll keep you right. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to attach a little thing on this that's an on click. So when we click this, JavaScript is going to spring to life and do a whole bunch of cool stuff. So here's what we're going to do. On our form button here, do you remember how we passed in this array called attributes? Well, we're going to do the same with the button. So this time I'm going to say button attributes, so BTN attributes, right? Now, it's key value pairs, so the key is going to be on click, and that's going to be equal to, and let's have it saying something like, oh gee, what will we say here? Fetch funny headline. Okay, there we go. Fetch funny headline. Now, I did have a practice run last night, but I don't have any notes, so I apologize if I was falling over my words there. So whenever we click on submit button, we want some JavaScript to run. Now let's add our button attributes onto the form button as the third argument. So there you go. And if we save and refresh, and now I'm going to show you the page source code. And have a look, it's kind of over here, but if you look really closely, you should see that we've got our button here, and it says on click fetch funny headline. All right, so now let's do a little bit of JavaScript. Again, just for speed, I'll do this directly on the page. I'm going to say function fetch funny headline, like that, okay? And what this is going to do is we're going to read the value that's inside this form input here, and then we're going to send it to an API endpoint, and hopefully we'll have a funny headline returned. Now, in order to read this form element, I'm going to make life a little bit easier by giving this thing an element ID. To do that, we can say attributes ID equals, and I'll say original hyphen headline. Save. So again, if I just show you the source code, you'll see that we've now got an ID as part of our text input here. Now, the reason why that's cool is because it means that we can say in our JavaScript, even right at the top here, we can say const orig headline L, which means the original headline element. Now, you can call it anything you want. Call it form input, anything you want, right? But I'm going to go with this. And what does it equal? Document.get element by ID. And of course, it's our original headline. So because we've declared this at the top of the script here, it means that we can reference this anywhere in the JavaScript and everything will be fine. So for example, we could say if orig headline element dot value does not equal an empty string, then let's just do an alert that says orig headline element dot value. Let's just try that, right? So save. We're going to refresh. Now, if we don't have anything in here and we submit, nothing happens. But if we type something here like hello and submit, you'll see that we have a little alert that says hello. So this is reading this text area. Now, did you notice that when I clicked in here, we have these autocompletes, right? This is obviously the browser trying to be helpful. Sometimes that's a good thing to have, but sometimes it can be a little bit annoying. If that bothers you, then all you have to do is go back to your attributes here, and we're going to add one more attribute. This attribute is going to be called autocomplete, and we're going to give it a value of off and save that. So refresh, have a little click, and now we don't have those annoying autocompletes. So there you go, reading the value, and don't it make you feel good? Now, before we get entangled with API endpoints and all of that stuff, I'd really like to take a minute to focus on the flow of this web page, you know, and just sort of do the groundwork so that we have something that looks cool, you know. So what I think we're going to do is when people click submit, let's have it so that the form immediately disappears and we'll have a little spinner on the page to let them know that something's happening. Now the way that we're going to do this is we'll go underneath our form here and we're going to have a div with a class of spinner. I'm using Emmet here, by the way, just for speed. It's a plugin and it's enabling me to do this. So it's just an empty div with a class of spinner. So it's underneath the form, right? Now I'm going to save. I'm going to refresh. And as you can see, we have, I thought that was under the form. Oh, pardon me. I'm in the wrong place here. Underneath the form. Here we go. Underneath the form. Thank you very much. Save and refresh. And there you go. I think I'm zoomed in too much. Okay. So we've added a little spinner here. Now, that's cool. And of course, this is a little bit of CSS that comes with the framework. It saves lots of time, right? And what we're going to do is when we land on the page for the first time, we're not going to see this spinner. So let's just go straight into the div here and we're going to say style equals display none. And we'll save it and refresh. So as you can see, there's no spinner to be seen, but you and I know that there's a little spinner there, okay? That's our secret, and that sounded a little bit perverse. Anyway, what we're going to do now is we're going to reference this spinner, and when somebody submits the form, this spinner is going to magically reappear, and the form is going to disappear. So let's create references for these things. It'll make life a whole lot easier. We'll start with the form. I'm going to say const the form. By the way, I like to use camel case when I'm with JavaScript and snake case when I'm in PHP. Not all the time. I'm sort of all over the place. But you can do whatever makes you feel good. But I'm going to say that the form is document.get elements by tag name. So the tag name is form, and this thing is expecting an array. So for that reason, I'm going to add on a key of 0, and that means that now we've got this constant that refers to our form. Let's do one for the spinner. I'm going to say const spinner equals document.get elements. Now this time it's going to be by class name. The name of the class is spinner, and again, because it's expecting an array, I'll pass in a key of 0 in square brackets. So what that means is that when we submit our form, let's get rid of the alert. It has served its purpose. And what we're going to do is I'll leave a comment. I'll say hide the form. Okay, now the way that we hide the form is we say the form dot style dot display equals none. Then I'm going to display the spinner. So I'm going to do that by saying spinner dot display spinner dot style dot display equals, and it's actually flex. You could say block, but flex makes it go to the center, okay? So there we go. Now let's just save this and we'll have a little refresh. Now I'm going to add a headline. I'm going to click submit, and there you go. So the form disappeared, the spinner's on the screen, and all is well. The only thing is, I think the spinner's a little bit high up here. So let's go to where the styling is, and we'll say that for dot spinner, so anything with a class of spinner, we'll give it a minimum height of 7m. Save, refresh, let's try it now, submit, and there you go. Looks kind of cool, right? Looks kind of cool. Now, I want us to simulate how all of this stuff's going to work, okay? Normally, when you're dealing with OpenAI, normally it takes maybe about 5 seconds, something like that, to get a response back. So what we'll do is we'll build a sort of dummy page, and hopefully this means that we'll be ready when we come on to adding in all of the cool stuff. So what I'm going to do then is, underneath our spinner here, let's have a div with an ID, if I can type, of story, okay? So it's a div with an ID of story. Now this is where our funny headline's going to go, and it's also where our picture is going to go when it gets generated. It's all going to be inside here. And inside here, let's have an H2 like this, and I'll just say funny headline to go here. Let's just save that and refresh. So you can see how this is going to work, right? Now, since it's a headline, by the way, how about if we make it so that the H2 has a text transform of uppercase? Makes it look a little bit more like a newspaper, you know? So this is where our funny headline's going to go, and the picture is going to go above that. Now, let's clear this H2 here. We're going to make this empty, okay? So there you go. And I'm going to create a JavaScript reference to this H2. Now you can call it anything you want, but I'm going to say const funny headline L. So the funny headline element, I'll say it's document.get elements by tag name. Let's chuck in an H2, and we'll say 0, because once again this is expecting an array. So the idea here is going to be that when we submit the form, we're going to fetch a funny headline. So let's just say funny headline element dot inner HTML equals this is funny. Something like that, right? Now let's save, refresh. So I'm just going to do that, hit submit, and there you go. So this is the flow, right? This is the flow. But of course, just to do a realistic simulation, let's add in a little set timeout. Now this is just for the moment. We'll take it out later, right? But we'll have a set timeout with maybe a 2-second gap here. And then let's just have a thing in here that says draw funny headline. Okay, so something like that. And we'll have a little function here that says draw funny headline. And so now we're just going to say funny headline element dot inner HTML equals this is, actually it's not very funny, but it will be soon. And whilst we're here, let's now do the opposite of these two things. So let's now display the form. Okay, so instead of hiding the form, we're now going to display the form. So I'm going to say that display is block. And let's now hide the spinner. So for the spinner, display is going to be none again. And also, let's clear the form field. So the form field is our original headline element here. That's the form field. So if we just say original headline element dot value is empty, and there you go. Okay, so let's just save this. I'll shrink this down in case you need to look at the code. So there's what we've got so far, something like that. I'm going to save and refresh, and then add in some headline. Doesn't matter what it is here. Click submit. You can see it's doing its thing, and then boom, there you go. There you go. Now, if you want, you can center the H2. I just thought of that actually. So let's do a little text align center, or alternatively, you can have exactly the same effect by going to the H2 and saying class is text center. It's up to you, right? So here we go. This is the flow, and that's how it's going to work. And don't it make you feel good? All right. So now we're going to do some fantastic custom API development here. We already have an admin panel. Remember this? So we can already use this if we want to. But wouldn't it be cool if we had some kind of API endpoint where we could post stuff using JavaScript and have that take care of adding the records? Well, turns out you've already built one, because if you go to your website base URL, then API/explorer/stories, there you will find a whole bunch of API endpoints, and these were all created when you generated the module. Now, just to show you how this works, we've got one at the top here that says get. If we click on that, you'll see a pop-up, and if you click submit, by the way, it will say invalid token. There is token authorization here, but if we just tick bypass authorization, then click submit, look at that. It's returning the information that happens to be from this table here. Pretty cool, right? Pretty cool. Now, over on our website, we are interested in creating a new record when somebody fills out a headline and presses submit. So if you look down here, you'll see that we've got one actually called create. So if you click on it, you can see that this one is an API that accepts post requests, okay? So this is going to be an HTTP post request. And with this one, if we click in here, you can see that it auto-completes to help you get started. These are the fields that this is expecting. Now, I'm going to add in some stuff. Let's just say AAA, BBB, a few C's, something like that, right? I'm going to click bypass authorization. There's a deliberate mistake coming up here, because when we submit, you'll see that it says endpoint not activated since no authorization rules have been declared. This is not an error. This is just a little bit of security, because I think that it would be really irresponsible to just leave something like this wide open, even if you had basic token authorization. It's just not good, you know. So we're going to have to activate this endpoint, and let me show you how easy this is. Open up your text editor, head to Stories, Assets, API.json. Now in here, you'll see a whole bunch of settings for API endpoints. And if you look really closely, you'll see that all of the endpoints on this page match the settings here. So this is where we define these endpoints. Now if you look down, you'll see that there's one called create. Okay, I'll just zoom you in a bit. So that's our create endpoint. We've got a URL, we've got a request type and some other stuff. But you'll notice that the one above has got some authorization rules, and this one has no authorization rules. So let's fix that now. I'm going to do a little comma. I'm going to say authorization, and just to keep this really easy, I'll do a semicolon and in quotations an asterisk. That means that this API endpoint is wide open. And I'll save. Now obviously we would not do this in a live situation, but it's just a tutorial and I want to keep moving forward, right? So save that, and now we're going to press submit. And as you can see, it says the server response is 200. That's our HTTP response code. It means everything's okay. And it returns the ID, the headline, basically all of the details for our brand new record, which has just been added. Pretty cool, right? Pretty cool. But you know, I think we can do a whole lot better than this. Let's make it so that we are only submitting an original headline. So very carefully, let's just remove this, okay? So I'm hitting the backspace button here, and I'm only going to be posting the original headline. However, before our endpoint just takes this original headline and adds a record, I want to add what's called a before hook. Let me show you how this works. So if we go to our create thing here, we're going to say comma, and then it's before hook with an uppercase H. We're going to do a colon, and our before hook is going to be called fetch underscore funny underscore headline, and save, right? So what this means is, before we do the usual insert, we're going to run everything through a little function with this name. Now, open up your stories controller file. It's inside the stories module. Looks something like this. And right at the top here, we're going to say function fetch funny headline. And in here, I'm just going to echo super cool with a little die statement and save. So this time, when we hit submit, you'll see that it says super cool, and then the script stops. And that, my friends, is a before hook. Now, the way that before hooks work, the whole idea is we take in whatever is coming in. I'm going to represent this by a thing called input. Then we're going to do some manipulation. We're actually going to call OpenAI and all sorts of stuff. But then, when we change the input, we're going to return it. And that's it. Then it's just going to insert the database record. If you want to impress your friends, by the way, what we're doing here is we are creating middleware. That's the fancy name because it's jumping in front of the request, right? So, it just so happens that we do have some stuff coming in. Let me prove that. I'm going to say JSON input, comma, true. Now, JSON is a little function that comes with the Trongate framework, and it displays arrays and objects and things in a nice way. And comma true just adds a die statement. It's exactly the same as saying this, okay? So we're going to say JSON input true, and if we save and then submit, now you can see that a whole bunch of stuff has been submitted here. We've got a token, we've got some parameters, module name, and so on. Now, suppose we wanted to get this headline here that has been submitted. We can do this by saying original headline is input params original headline. And just to prove that we do have this, I'm going to echo original headline with a die statement. And if we submit now, there is our headline. There it is. Okay? So, what we're going to be doing now is, well, maybe not right now, but the idea is we're going to send the original headline to OpenAI to get a funny headline. Okay? We'll do that just in a short while. But right now, let me just show you how this is going to work. OpenAI is going to give us some kind of funny headline. Now let's just imagine that this is a totally funny headline. Just imagine that we've received this from OpenAI, right? So what we're now going to do is we're going to say input params, and then we're going to say funny headline equals, and we'll add in whatever the funny headline is. Now we also have a picture column on our database here. Let's just for the moment say input params picture equals, and we'll make it an empty string, okay? So that's how a before hook works. We're taking in a bunch of stuff, we are changing the bunch of stuff, and then we're returning the input. The Trongate framework's going to then pick this up, do the database insert, and all is well. Now let me save this, and I'm going to demonstrate this working. So I'll say another headline. Let me do, here I go again. I should have said on my own, but anyway, I'm going to hit submit. And as you can see, a new record has been created. It might be easier if I show you this on the actual database. So we've got a new record here, and you can see that we've now added this funny headline, and we've given the picture an empty string. Pretty cool, right? Pretty cool. So this endpoint is in quite good shape, and now what I want to do is have the home page sending a message or sending an HTTP request actually to this endpoint. Now look down the bottom left, you see how it says URL segments? That is telling us where this endpoint is. So I'm going to copy those URL segments, right? And now let's go back to our homepage file here. And when we have this fetch funny headline going on right around here, let's get rid of set timeout. Just get rid of this. That was just for testing it, right? And so what we're going to do is we're going to fetch a funny headline from the API endpoint that we've created. So to do this, I'm going to say const target URL equals, and I'm going to chuck in the URL segments. By the way, if you want to be super proper and have a full URL, you can echo with PHP base URL. So that's going to give us the full URL that takes us to the endpoint. Remember, base URL is defined inside config, so it's perfectly okay to just jump into PHP and have PHP add the full URL there. Alright, so now we're going to do our HTTP request. There's a variety of different ways of doing this with JavaScript, and in fact what I'm going to do here might even be a little bit crude. I'm sure there's a way to do this asynchronously, but I'm going to keep this tutorial really simple, and this is the way that I'm going to do this. I'm going to say const HTTP equals new XML HTTP request. Okay, then I'm going to say http.open, and I'm going to pass in two arguments. The first argument is the request type, so this is going to be a post request, and the second argument is going to be the target URL. Okay, so what we're saying is here's the target URL, and we're going to be doing a post request to this target URL. Of course, the question is, what are we going to be posting? Well, let's just clarify that. I'm going to say const params equals, and I'm going to make a little JavaScript object thing here. And this is going to have a key of original underscore headline, which actually is what this is expecting, right? And it's going to have a value of the original headline element dot value. So this is what's going to be posted. And obviously if you had more fields, you would do a comma and, you know, do something like that, okay? But this one's quite simple. Don't forget, you do not need a semicolon here, and that's going to be fine. So moving on with this thing, we're going to say http.setRequestHeader. I'm going to say content type is application/JSON, and then I'm going to say http.send, and I'm going to pass in json.stringify params. So I'm going to turn this thing into a little JSON string, and hopefully that will keep JavaScript happy. Now, by the way, wasn't that miserable? I think it was kind of miserable, but stay cool. Everything from here onwards is easy. Now we're going to say http.onload. So whenever this thing has finished doing whatever it's going to do, we're going to call a function. Okay? There's other ways of doing this syntax, by the way, but for me this is the easiest, right? Now, this function is going to have access to an HTTP object, and from that we can read the text. We can even read the HTTP response code. Let me just demonstrate. If we console.log http.status, then if we console.log http.response text, I'm going to save, and watch what happens. Here I go again on my own. Alright, I'm going to submit. Actually, I'm at the wrong place. Let me go back to my home page here. Alright, so here's our original headline. I'll do it from here. Here I go again on my own. Now I'll open up the inspector. I'll get the console up here. There it is on the left, right? And I'm going to click submit. And as you can see on the top left here, we've got our HTTP response code, which is 200, which in this case means everything's okay. So that's this part here. And then we've got our response text, which is of course this JSON string that represents our new database record. And there it is. Pretty cool, right? Pretty cool. Now, if something goes wrong, the HTTP status will not equal 200. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just say if http.status does not equal 200. Now hopefully that won't happen much, but if that happens, I'm going to say handle error, and I'm going to pass in the HTTP response text. Okay, so let's do that, but otherwise we're going to call draw funny headline. This is how it's going to work, okay? And we'll deal with draw funny headline in just a minute. But first of all, I want to deal with this error handling thing. Let's be responsible developers. So we'll head over to our endpoint here, and we're just going to imagine that something went wrong, okay? So let's imagine that there's some kind of error message. Something went wrong. I'm sure there'll be better error messages, but there you go. Now we're going to simulate an error of some sort. We can do that by saying HTTP response code, maybe say something like 400 or anything you want actually, and then I'm just going to echo the error message, and then I'm going to have a die statement. So none of this stuff is going to work. We're just pretending that there's an error, okay? So if I go back to the API Explorer just to show you, you'll see that it says 400 bad request, something went wrong. Now by the way, in the Trongate documentation, there is a page inside the docs. If you search for HTTP response, there's a page here that gives you a list of all of the HTTP response status codes here and what they mean, you know. So there's one that says 403 forbidden. So we could say, okay, let's have a 403, and we'll just say you are not allowed. This is how errors would get handled, okay? Now, to show you this with our website, let's make a thing called handle error. So I'll say function handle error. Now this is taking in our response text, which is actually an error message. You can say error message like that if you want. So it's entirely up to you what you do. How about if we do a little alert with the error message? So we could do that, and then we could just reset the form. So I'll just copy this and then do something like that. And it's not 100% perfect, but hopefully it will be acceptable. So let's now simulate an error. We'll just make sure that everything's okay as far as that goes. So here we go. I'm adding in, I'll refresh this. I'm adding in a headline. I'm going to submit. It says you are not allowed. And when we say okay, everything goes back. Perfect, right? So that's a nice little bit of error handling. Hopefully we won't need this, but there you go. Now let's deal with the business of drawing the funny headline. Now, what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to just pass in the HTTP response text. And by the way, let's take this stuff out. So we're all back to normal here, right? There we go. So we're going to pass in our HTTP response text. And it's going to run draw funny headline. And what's going to happen is, instead of us just hard coding this in, we're going to read whatever has come in from our endpoint. So let's just pass in response text. We know that that's what we've got. Now, actually, that is a JSON string. Maybe we could just call this JSON string, right? And we're now going to say const text object equals, and I'm going to say JSON.parse the JSON string. By the way, you can use different variable names if you want. I'm just making this up as I go along, you know. But in any event, now I've got access to this text object. That means that I can go here and I can say text object dot funny headline. And there you go. And with a little bit of luck, now if I type in an original headline, hit submit, you'll see that it says this is a totally funny headline, and it was getting that from our endpoint. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. And just look at how fast that was as well. Super fast. Boom. All right. So now we are ready to do the bit that you came here for. And that is the OpenAI shenanigans. So most of the action for us is going to take place on this stories controller file. And what we want to do now is send our original headline to OpenAI. In order to do this, you're going to have to go to the OpenAI website, of course. So it's OpenAI. And from here, just create an account. You can do all of this for free. Everything I'm showing you here is free, by the way. And then just sign in. I'm going to sign in right now, okay? All right. I hope this works. Sometimes it can be a bit busy, you know. Anyway, it looks like we're okay. All right. So assuming that you have an account, the first thing that you're going to have to do is get an API key. Now, I'm going to show you how I got the API key, but if there's an easier way, please help us out and tell us in the comments. Also, if this method stops working, have a look at the description and I'll update you and I'll leave some instructions there. But today, this is how I get an API key. I click into Quick Start Tutorial, and very carefully, I want you to scroll down and look for a little button that says Create New Secret Key. Now, if you click on that, it's going to give you an API key. So then we just copy the key here by clicking this green button. And now I'm going to go back into config and I'm going to add in our API key. I'm going to do this by saying define. I'll call this one API underscore key and I'm going to paste in the API key and save. Okay, it's as easy as that. Now let me just clean this up a bit. We've got a whole bunch of stuff open here. Alright, so that's that. Now, once again, let's go back to the stories controller file. And so we have an API key and we're ready to now send a request to OpenAI to generate a funny headline. This is something that we can achieve with pure PHP doing a curl request. Curl is an extension that is available on almost all installations of PHP. I mean, you've probably got it, right? And like I say, there's no command line, there's no third-party libraries, but the code can be a little bit awkward. So to speed things up, I have created a repo on GitHub, and all it's got is just some PHP functions. It's really, really simple stuff, no big deal. And it's just some PHP functions to get us all started here. So the first function I'm going to show you is make funny headline. So let me show you this. In fact, I'm just going to click on the raw file here. And here it is. So it's just some PHP, right? And I'm going to copy that. And then I'm going to paste it underneath our fetch funny headline. Okay. So let me talk you through how this works. And there is a chance that I've changed it perhaps by the time you watch this, okay? But in any event, here's how it works. This is going to accept our headline. That is our original headline. Then we're going to do some curl shenanigans. This is all just PHP, okay? Now, the key part of this that I want you to pay attention to is this prompt here. I don't know if you've tried the OpenAI chat system, Chat GPT, but you know how you can go here and add in a question here? This area down the bottom here, this text area, this is what we are referring to when we say prompt. And as you can see, I've added in some text. Maybe I've changed it by now, but here I've got create a news headline that blames all bad news on a gang of evil, creepy clowns. Give an absurd and funny explanation as to why clowns are responsible for the bad news. The headline should be based on this. And then we pass in our headline. Ah ha ha ha. So it's exactly as if you had gone to this website here and typed in the thing here, and then, you know, your headline goes here. So that's exactly what we're doing, except we're doing it with PHP. Now, you can see that we've got some options here. For example, we are defining the language model here that we're using. I'm not going to read all of that because I've left some notes on the README, and right there I explain what each and every one of these things does. So you're welcome to read that if you want. But if we go down a little bit further, you'll see that we are passing in our API key. Remember, we set that up. So here we're passing in the API key and it's doing its thing. And eventually it's going to create an output object. And so you can see that this output has got some text and it's got a status. That's actually an HTTP response code. Now, I want to really test this endpoint on its own before we go any further. So let me head to the website here and I'm going to go to stories/make funny headline. Now, before we run this, let's just hard code a headline here. Let's say something like Mona Lisa burned or destroyed in fire. Let's just imagine that that's the headline, okay? and we're going to let this do its thing, and I really want you to see what's coming back. So I'm going to say JSON output true. I'm going to save. So now let's test this out. Here we go. Oh, hang on, there's a typo. I forgot the letter I. There you go. And it's doing its thing, and there's what we get back. So you can see that we've got some text: Mona Lisa destroyed, evil creepy clowns to blame, and so on. And you can also see that we've got the status. So if you have something like that coming back, congratulations. It means that this is working. So now that we know that this is working, I'll take out the headline. And I'll take out this line here. And so now we know that we're going to have this thing returned with text and status. Okay? So let's now go upstairs. And where we've got this funny headline equals, now we're going to call upon make funny headline, and we're going to pass in our original headline. But beware, it's actually not a funny headline that we get back. Do you remember? It's actually this output object. That's what we get back. Okay? So what we're going to do then is we're going to say if output calling upon status, and remember we do have a status, right? Hopefully it's 200, but if the status does not equal 200, then we're going to say HTTP response code, and we're going to chuck in the output status, and then we're going to echo the output text. That's the error message, and then we'll do a die statement. So if anything goes wrong, that's what's going to happen, and we have already prepared our page to deal with this gracefully. But otherwise, well, strictly speaking, we don't even need an else statement, because remember, we've added a die statement here. So what we can do is we can say that the funny headline is output loading up text. And by the way, you could say HTTP response code 200 if you want, but the truth is that happens automatically. I'll keep it in anyway, doesn't matter, right? But there you go, and hopefully that's going to now give us a headline from OpenAI. So save. Let's go back to the home page, and let's try this from here. So I'll just say Mona Lisa destroyed in fire. I'll hit submit. So it's querying OpenAI, and there you go. Mona Lisa destroyed in evil clown fire. The Mona Lisa was destroyed in a fire last night, and investigators are pointing the finger at a gang of evil clowns. Okay, pretty cool, pretty cool. Alright, so now we're going to move on to the last part of this tutorial. I think it's the most fun part, and that is where we get OpenAI to generate a picture that represents our story. Now the way that this is going to work is we're going to add a headline such as Mona Lisa destroyed in fire, for example, and we're going to send the original headline to OpenAI, but we're going to have to do this in a sort of two-step process, because what we really want is a picture of the Mona Lisa with a clown, right? And before we can do that, we're going to have to extract the main subject. It's actually technically called the direct object of the sentence. So I'm speaking to you a little bit like a linguist here, right? And so what we're going to do is we're going to query OpenAI, and we're going to say, what is the direct object of this sentence? So for example, if we have a sentence, exotic bird found dead on the beach, the direct object is the exotic bird. It's the thing, the animal, the person, or the group of people that are most affected by the sentence, right? So we're going to ask OpenAI that question. OpenAI is hopefully going to say, it's the Mona Lisa. Then we're going to send a second request to OpenAI that says, draw a picture of a clown laughing at the Mona Lisa, or something like that. and then we're going to get it to generate a picture, right? So that's how it works. Now, when we do the first stage, OpenAI is going to give us a response something like this, okay? Now, we're still using this prompt business here. You can see I had a little shot of it a minute ago, actually. We're still basically using this. It's the same type of thing as before. And these are the kinds of responses that we can expect to get back. So sometimes you can see it adds double quotations. Sometimes it gives you a long sentence. Sometimes it gives you a short sentence, okay? So what we're going to do is, after we've done our query, we'll do a little bit of string manipulation, and hopefully we can extract the direct object and get rid of all of this junk here, okay? Now, again, to speed things up a little bit, I have made a little PHP function for you. This one is called fetch target subject. It's over on that GitHub page, and the link is in the description. So if I just show you the raw code here, it's just a PHP function. Perhaps I have changed it actually, at least slightly, but let's copy that function and we're going to paste it in underneath make funny headline, and you're going to find that these two things are very, very similar. So fetch target subject takes in our headlines just like before, and you can see the main difference here is our prompt. This time it says, what is the direct object in the following English sentence? And then we pass in our headline, okay? So that's going to give us one of these types of responses. And then down here, we're obviously passing in our API key and all of that, but down here, I'm doing a little bit of string manipulation, which I have no confidence in at all, so I'm probably going to tweak this later on. But nevertheless, a little bit of string manipulation, and hopefully, when all is said and done, it's going to return an output object that's useful. So let's test this before we go any further. I'm just going to write in a headline. So we'll say headline is Mona Lisa destroyed in fire. Okay, I'll just hard code this in. Then I'm going to go right downstairs. I'm going to say JSON output, comma true, save it. Now we know that this is called fetch target subject. So let's copy that. And we're going to go to our website here and then go to stories / fetch target subject. And hopefully you can see here it's responding with Mona Lisa, and it's giving us a status of 200. Hopefully, you know. Anyway, that's that, right? So that's going to fetch the target subject. Now let's just stay with OpenAI and we'll go straight on to the next function. So the next function and the final one. By the way, there's a storm here. Did you hear the door slamming? There is a storm. Apologies for that. Anyway, the next function, the final one, is generate image. Let me show you that one. Again, pure PHP. No third-party libraries, no command line, nothing like that. It's just a function. Let's just copy this one and let's just go straight on and paste this one in here. Let's get all of this OpenAI stuff out of the way, right? So this one, generate image, this takes in a target subject. Now, the model here is different. This is calling a model called the image alpha blah 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 model. I say blah 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 because maybe that number has changed, I don't know. But the prompt this time is where we add in a description of what we want. And this time I'm saying, let's have a clown laughing in front of, and we're going to pass in the Mona Lisa. Now sometimes the sentence might not be perfect. It might say clown laughing in front of dog instead of a lost dog or something. But it should be enough for OpenAI to generate something that's meaningful. You can see we're asking for one picture. Here's the picture size, and there's a couple of other things. You can see that it says response format URL, so it's going to return a path to a picture, right? And that's pretty much it. The rest Well, passing in our API key, no surprises. It's doing its thing, and again, we're returning one of those output things. So let's give this one a little try. Now, these picture URLs can be absolutely huge, so I'm not going to JSON object with this one. I'm just going to echo output calling upon text and then a die statement, right? So let's test this out. And again, let's just hard code in for the moment a target subject. Now, the kind of thing that we're getting back is something like Mona Lisa. So let's just do that, Mona Lisa, so we can simulate how this might work. So there we go, and we're going to save. And so now let's test this one out. If this works, it'll be a really huge step forward. So here we go. It's doing its thing. And hopefully, oh, there we go. I told you that the URLs can be a bit big, okay? But copy this URL here and open up a new tab. And you should find, it's actually a pretty cool picture. So you can see a picture frame. The picture has gone, it's been destroyed. And we've actually got looks like maybe two clowns laughing, and that's absolutely fine. Now, by the way, I've run this a few times, and sometimes it just shows you a kind of generic oil painting. So it's just to let you know that I think OpenAI does sometimes have challenges if you put in things like a politician's name or a company name, or even something like the Mona Lisa, you know. It seems to be respecting things like copyrights and whatnot. So in any event, there you go. That's the picture I've got. I wonder what one you got. And I tell you what, I'm feeling quite good. So let's now wrap this thing up. And now that we know that these two things are working, let's bring the whole thing to life. Now, I'll start off by preparing this. I'll get rid of this target subject. So now we're really taking in a target subject. And I'll get rid of this output text. That's excellent. Let's go to the other one now. We'll take out this here and we'll go upstairs. And once again, we'll take out the headline. Excellent. So we are ready to rock. Now, we said earlier on, let's send the original headline to OpenAI later. Well, we've done that, so we can get rid of the later thing, right? Now I'm just going to save this. And now let's have a quick look at our homepage here. So we've got quite a nice homepage here. It does a good job of displaying the headline. But now we are going to go a little bit further. So what we're going to do is head to where it says draw funny headline, okay? And you can see that we've got a point here where we clear the form text field. That happens right here, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just jump in here and I'm going to say generate image. And just before we clear this value, I'm going to run generate image and I'm going to pass in the value that is on the form field. So that's our original headline here, okay? Now, once again, folks, I know that you could do this asynchronously, but I don't want to make this any more complicated than it already is. So a little function here, it's going to be called generate image, and it's going to take in our original headline element. But by the way, wouldn't it be cool if, as well as doing the image, we could update the database and add in the image path? That means we could reference all of our stuff later on, right? So let's not just pass in the original headline. How about if we pass in the update ID as well? And we can do that by saying comma, and we're going to say, do you see how we've got this text object here? Well, we can say text object .id. And so now we have a headline and an update ID being passed into this JavaScript thing called generate image. Now, before we go talking to API endpoints, I'd like to do a little bit of work on the page. I'm going to dynamically create an element. So I'll just say create an info div. So I'll say const info div is document.createElementDiv. I'm going to say info-div set attribute ID is info-div. So we're making a div here with JavaScript, right? And I'm going to say info-div.setAttribute class. I'm going to give it two classes. I'm going to have a class of text center, a little space, and another class called blink. These are both classes that come with Trongate. You can do this, you can stack classes, it's absolutely fine. Next, I'm going to say info-div, and I'm going to say inner HTML equals little asterisk, and I'll say loading picture hyphen please wait, and another little asterisk. Then, if we scroll back up, you may remember that we created a div with an ID of story. So let's reference this at the top of the code. I'm going to say const story element, or story L, is document get element by ID story. And what we're going to do is we're going to add our info div inside the story element. So I'm going to say story element, but I don't want it to go after the headline. I want it to go before the funny headline. So I'm going to say insert before. We're going to insert the new div, and it's going to be inserted before the funny headline element. There you go. Now let's just save that, and in fact let's go to the style section here whilst we can, and we'll just say hash symbol info div, and I'll just say minimum height is or actually how about just margin 3em. That'll do us. Okay, now save that. Let's go back here and refresh, and I'm going to just say police give up hope of finding lost dog. So we'll click submit. Now it's going to fetch the headline, but as you can see now we've got this div here that says loading picture please wait. And it's really giving us a crazy story here, you know, but there you go, right? So we're getting a nice little presentation on the screen here. So now we're going to create a custom API endpoint. Previously, I had you do stuff with the API Explorer. Do you remember all of that stuff? Well, that was pretty much manipulating endpoints that come with the framework, but you can actually create your own entirely custom endpoints, and it's quite easy. I'll show you how. If you go to api.json, I'll copy this get by post, maybe paste up here, and I'm going to just call this one generate image, something like that. Okay, am I calling it generate image or generate picture? Generate image. All right, so this is going to be in the URL segments of the way we do this is we say stories / init gen image. That'll do us, init gen image, and we'll just say in the description generate an image using OpenAI. Now we can accept some parameters. I'll simplify the authorization just for the purposes of this tutorial, and if we save and refresh, you can see that we've now got this thing ready to rock. Now you don't need to do that, by the way. You could set up a custom endpoint without this, but sometimes it's nice to do this because it's kind of good for testing stuff. So if we now open up stories, and right underneath fetch funny headline, we're going to have a function here called init gen image. I'm going to just echo hello there with a die statement, and if we test this, and I'll zoom you in, you can see that it says hello there. Did you hear the door slamming? There's actually a storm outside, believe it or not. How's that for drama? So in any event, here is init gen image. Now what's this thing going to actually do? Well, first of all, it's going to get some posted data. The way that we're going to do that is we're going to say params equals, and it's file get contents, and we pass in php://input. Now that's going to be a JSON string. So to get the posted params, we're going to say posted params is JSON decode params. Then we're going to get an update ID. I'll say that the update ID is posted params loading up update ID, something like that. I'm confusing everybody here by juggling between camel case and snake case. But in any event, we'll do that. Now, if we don't have an update ID, we could do question marks and then 0. This is the null coalescing operator. It means if you don't find an update ID, just assume that the update ID is 0. Next, we're going to do the same thing with the headline. I'll say that the headline equals posted params calling upon the headline. And if we don't find a headline, we'll just assume it to be an empty string, okay? So we now have the posted data. Shall we go over to the home page and we'll send the posted data? Okay, so let's send the headline and update ID to our custom API. So the first thing we'll do is we'll say const target URL equals, I'm going to use PHP and say base URL, makes me feel good. And then if you look here, you can see the URL segments. So it's stories init gen image. That's our target URL, okay? Then build an object containing all the things we want to post, okay? So we're going to say const params equals, now this time it's going to be update ID, a little comma, and headline. Simple as that, okay? Then we're going to do the actual post request. So create the HTTP post request. Now to save time, I'll just copy the one that we had previously. Here it is here. So I'm just going to copy this, head in here, and go like this. Okay, we'll backtrack here. So that's going to do all of that. Now if the status is not 200, we'll handle the error, that's fine. And if everything is okay, well, we know that we're going to draw a picture. But first of all, I think that I would like to actually, do you know what? I think I'd like to test it. So let me head over here on init gen image, and I'm going to just say you posted, and let's chuck in the update ID, and I'll say headline of, and we'll chuck in the headline. It does no harm to test this out, okay? So let's head here, and we're going to test this by adding in an update ID. I'll just say something like 88. Then I'll say headline equals, here we go again, little curly bracket here, and I'm going to hit submit. And it says you posted 88 and a headline of here we go again. So that's excellent, right? We now know that this is working, which is pretty cool. Again, over on our home page, we're going to do exactly the same thing. We're posting the stuff here, right? Now, if we have an error, we handle the error. But let's just focus on this init gen image here. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to say, well, first of all, I suppose you could say if the headline is equivalent to empty, well, we could do an HTTP response code of 400 or something and say something like no headline, something like that, you know. I'm going to ignore the error checking from here onwards if that's okay though, because I want to move forward, right? So let's just say that the first thing we're going to do is figure out what the main target subject is from the headline. Now remember, if we scroll down here, we've got fetch target subject. So I'm going to say output equals this. It's going to be fetch target subject with our submitted headline. Now don't forget that this is going to be an output object. So just like we said before, we're going to say if the status is not 200, then we're just going to output whatever the error message is, and that will be the end of the road, okay? However, if everything is okay, well, now we know that the target subject is going to be output calling upon text. Now don't forget, folks, these objects here that we're getting, they're returning text and they are returning a status thing, right? So hopefully we have a target subject. Now we're going to generate an image using OpenAI. So how do we do that? We'll scroll down, and once again we've got generate image here. This is going to accept our target subject this time. So I'll call this one output. Let's call it output underscore img just for clarity, right? So that's going to be this generate image, and of course we're passing in the target subject. Now once again, let's make sure, maybe we are going to do a little bit of error checking, right? If the output status is not, if the output image underscore img status is not 200, then it's going to be an error, and there you go. But assuming that everything is okay, well, that means that our picture path, I'll just write this actually, the picture path is output image loading up text. So we can do an HTTP 200 response code, and we can echo out the picture path, but we can do even more than that, because remember folks, we passed in an update ID. So we can also say, let's update the picture column on the database. So the way that we do this is we simply say data picture equals, now let's save a line of code here. We'll go like that, and then I'm going to say this model, I'm calling upon the model which is part of Trongate. I'm going to say update. Now we do have an update ID here, okay? So we do have an update ID, and then I'm going to pass in the data, and the name of the table is stories. That's that. Now if you want to be super secure, we can also say update ID equals an integer of update ID. We probably don't need to do this, but that's going to convert the update ID into an integer. And sometimes when you're doing SQL, this is a very healthy thing to do. It eliminates any possibility of SQL injection. Okay, so that's us now updating the picture column on the database. So now we have our pick path. I mean, let me just see, that's data picture. Yeah, that's cool. And then we output the pick path. That's it. That's basically it. Okay. So well done us. Now back to the home page here. If everything is okay, we're going to say draw picture. Now hold on a minute. So this is init fetch image. I suppose I should call it image. So draw image. Now this is going to accept HTTP response text. So we'll have a little JavaScript function here. It's going to be called draw image. It's taking in a pick path. And here's what we're going to do. Let's say const info div is document.getElementById info-div. Now I'm going to say info div.innerHTML is empty, and then I'm going to say info div, let's say class list dot remove blink, because we don't want it blinking anymore, right? So we're clearing out the info div. In fact, maybe I should just say that. Clear the info div. Then we're going to create an image on the page. So to do that, I'll say const new pic, I'll call it, is document.createElementImg. I'm going to say new pic, set attribute source. Now the source is going to be equal to the pic path. And then, do you remember how we had our, oh pardon, forget me, my head exploded there. We add it to the info div. Yeah, okay. So here we go. So it's info div dot append child, and it's going to be the new pic. And there you go. Okay, so that's that. Now there's just one little tweak that I'm going to do before we wrap this up. At the point when we fetch a funny headline, we're going to clear, or actually we're going to remove the info div if it exists. So I'm going to just say const info div is document getElementById info div, and if there is an info div, then I'm just going to say info div.remove. That will get rid of the div and the picture. Okay, so that's about us. I'm going to now give this thing a quick shot. So let's try this. Rare bird found on the beach. We'll say submit. So there's our headline. The clowns are responsible. Here comes the picture, hopefully. And it's loading it up, and you can see that we've got a beach. There's a clown and there is a bird. Shall we do a couple more? All right, let's try Mona Lisa destroyed in fire. And again, now hold on a second. Oh, well. Something not quite right there. It says info's not defined. Now, what is this talking about? Fetch funny headline. Oh, of course, it's infodiv.remove. Okay, refresh. That's fine. All right, let's try another. Let's try the bank has been robbed. We'll hit submit. So, there you go. We're blaming the clowns. Here comes the picture. Here it comes. And there is the picture. It's not a bad one, actually. And let's do another one. Let's do, how about dangerous tiger escapes from zoo. Let's hit submit. So there you go. Loading the picture. And here it comes. And there you go. Pretty cool. The only thing is, this could do with being cleared as well. So let's just clear the contents of the funny headline. So to do that, we're just going to say funny headline element dot inner HTML is empty. Can I just do a couple more? All right. Police give up hope of finding lost dog. So here we go. So clowns to blame for dog going missing. Here comes the picture. And that's really excellent. I'm going to do just one more. And this was a real headline, believe it or not, here in the UK. So the headline was, let's see, it was exotic bird turned out to be seagull covered in curry sauce. I'm going to hit submit. So it's doing that. And there we go, we're blaming the clowns. And here comes, hopefully, our picture. And there you have it. So I hope you've enjoyed this one. I will chuck my entire app here on GitHub for you. I know that this has been a long one, but I've had a lot of fun with this. And if you enjoy this type of content, I'm not too proud to beg, you know. Not too proud to beg. Please do consider giving this a star. But most importantly, please, if you like using Trongate, please do give us a star on GitHub. It's all we ask for, and it would really mean the world to us. Okay, thanks very much. Well done. I'll see you later.